here. They're actually my dream wheels, but they're going to be your wheels. These are Ray's Graham Lights 15x8 plus 35 4x100 in color 4H. Do you know what that means? Mag blue. How can these be your wheels? We are giving these away. These are the first place prize. Seal of authenticity. These just came in from JHP USA, brand new in the box. The only reason they're open is to verify what they are, and they are 100% legit. They are the brand new stickers. So how can you win these beautiful Graham Lights 57 DRs? Well, just go to thedragonspec.com, follow the link in the description below, pick up a shift knob or sunglass giveaway pack. You'll be registered to win. Every $5 is an entry. First place is the Ray's Graham Lights 57 DRs or $1,500 in cash. Second place is the Wireworks B/D series harness or $700 in cash. Third place is the JDI Ghost Lock or $350 in cash. Fourth place is the Momo Monte Carlo steering wheel or $250 in cash. Fifth place, you get your money back. Free shipping in the lower 48, international sales. You do have to email us for a quote on shipping, and if you do win, you will have to cover shipping of the items or just take the cash option. Celebrate your passion for driving with a Dragon-Spec shift knob. We have these in a thread pitch for Honda, Nissan, Mazda, Infiniti, and Mitsubishi. Go to the link below, thedragonspec.com, get you a bundle. There's not that many bundles left. Good luck to everybody out there. Let's start the video. The other day I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and we were going over the fact that in 2022, the JDM car world is so overexposed and we know everything about everything these days. We discussed how things used to be, how information was sort of hidden and secretive back in the day, and how a lot of people didn't know what JDM cars were. Now everybody and their mother knows what an R34 Skyline is. Everybody's looking to find a car that they can somehow find in a barn or with low mileage and flip. Car prices are out of control. People buy a JDM car and start a YouTube channel. Street racing has turned into street takeovers. Car shows have turned into car meets. And it wasn't always like this. But we started to ask the question, how did we get here? So here it is, the history of JDM car culture and street racing. Now, before you give me too much grief about including street racing into this category, just realize I have to include it because it is a big part of the culture and the history. Also, before the term JDM actually hit car culture, it was known as import car culture. We got to go all the way back to the late 80s and 90s to really dig into this deeply. Now, through the 80s, the Japanese manufacturers were on the American car manufacturers' tails as far as producing quality vehicles. And one of the vehicles that really seemed to take off and give birth to this scene is known as the second generation Honda CRX. While the CRX may not be the first car on your list, Japanese automakers were making the Toyota Supra, Mazda RX-7, Nissan Skyline, 300ZX, and so many other models to begin with. But these vehicles were expensive, and they weren't that popular at the time. Really have to think about what were high schoolers driving at the time. Ford Mustangs. If you were a rich kid, you definitely had the supercar of choice, which was either a Corvette or a DeLorean, which we all wish we had a DeLorean. For whatever reason, Americans really fell in love with the CRX, especially on the West Coast, and quietly the import scene began to grow. By the late 90s, the import car culture scene had really grown. There was supporting magazines like Sport Compact Car, Honda Tuning, as well as a plethora of other magazines. But the thing that people were essentially interested in is customizing these cars. Body kits, paintwork, lights, wheels, stereo systems, interiors that were wild. Misconceptions about engines and engine mods were wild and rampant. The internet was in its beginning stages, with forums just barely starting to pop up, people making wild claims all over the place, and there was no real way to fact check anybody. It was just kind of like the Wild Wild West. So what really brought all this to a head? Well, obviously, for most of us, in the summer of 2001, the movie The Fast and the Furious came out. At the time, this was referred to, quote-unquote, the movie. A lot of hardcore enthusiasts were very upset that this movie even came out to begin with, because it brought a lot of attention to the import car culture, and a lot of it was not great import car culture attention. One of the most annoying things was that there were so many newbies coming into the scene that really didn't know anything about their cars. They just wanted to be a part of the new, cool, hot thing at the time. The summer of 2001 is forever burned into my brain, not only because the movie Fast and the Furious came out, and it changed car culture forever. In the fall of 2001, 9/11 happened. And of course, this changed everything at the time. Put everything on hold. Everything sort of stopped for a while. People weren't sure what to do. The economy wasn't doing well for a while. People were on high alert, weren't sure if things were going to move back in a more positive direction or negative. We just didn't know at the time. Then Christmas came around.
I live my life a quarter mile at a time.
And the Fast and the Furious came out on DVD. Everybody went out and bought it and kicked up everybody's need for speed once again. And through the winter, they began to mod their cars, and people began to prep for going back out again, doing the car shows and things like that. Once springtime rolled around, it was on. People were ready to hit the streets and show off what they had, show off what they built, show off what they bought. However, this was kind of a problem because of the movie. Law enforcement had now been made aware of this subculture, the fact that street racing was going on, the fact that everybody and their mom that had a car, a Japanese car, was hot on the streets, and they began to crack down accordingly. Street racing prior had been sort of hidden in the corner in a dark alleyway where they could do a couple of runs and get away with it. Now, police officers were profiling anybody who had a set of clear corners or neon lights glowing from their car, loud stereos, wheels, whatever it was. The police officers were looking for it, and they were ready to crack down. In reality, the king of the streets was always something that we know as the sleeper. Not only was the sleeper a quick, fast car, but it was also the type of car you wouldn't notice. It went unnoticed among police. And this is where the birth of JDM comes from. JDM stands for Japanese Domestic Market, and it was a well-known term at the time. However, this term began to change as US enthusiasts began to notice what was happening in Japan. In the US, the term JDM began to get used for cars that used OEM bumpers and OEM lights so that they wouldn't get noticed by Johnny Law, as well as having rare, hard-to-source parts from the aftermarket in Japan, such as wheels and other mods. By 2004, JDM had basically taken over all of car culture. Anything JDM was on fire, essentially, and people were more interested in being quote-unquote JDM than ever. And what did this mean? No ricey body kits or funny Altezza taillights, or no more neon lights or big fancy wings that did nothing for downforce at all. At this point, enthusiasts were trying to out JDM each other left and right, which led to importing JDM cars themselves. A real right-hand drive car from Japan really takes the JDM cake, and of course people were trying to do it left and right. Importing cars became a debacle all on its own, which is a story for another time. For the next couple of years, people began to move to drifting. And while drifting took over for a little while, car culture overall sort of died off by about 2007. Of course, the purists have always remained in the culture, but it was like the weekend new guys had finally had their fill and moved on to something else. But the import car culture was about to get another shot in the arm, known as car meets. 2008 to 2010, the underground car culture of car meets and the JDM car world began to grow again. This new scene called Stance had sort of given birth to hard parking and built to park type of builds. Therefore, people could share their passion of cars and avoid the whole dirty street racing thing altogether. It became violent, dangerous, egos would get bruised and guns would get brought out. It just wasn't a fun thing to go to or witness anymore. It wasn't like it used to be. Well-organized teams would show up to make sure that they could get every single advantage they could to make sure their car would win in a street race. It was getting out of hand and it was almost too much hassle. It was no longer fun. The message was pretty clear, just take it to the track. And by this point, most people did move on to the drag strip to really get their fix if they wanted to race. Car meets, on the other hand, were there now to help celebrate the love of these cars, to show them off, put them on display. As the scene and culture began to grow, so did the internet over the years. There were websites like streetfire.net where people would post hot car videos online. And of course, people moved on to YouTube. As the car meet scene grew, so did the need for content on YouTube. The culture was changing in a way that people wanted to be able to access their interests at any hour of the day. YouTube, as it grew, facilitated this. It wasn't long before YouTube was taking over what TV was doing. As online social media grew, so did the opportunistic people that understood if you could get content that people wanted to watch, they would watch it. It wasn't long before TV shows and magazines were obsolete, and people weren't buying them or paying attention to them any longer. Advertising dollars started to pour into places like YouTube, now giving an entire generation the ability to build their passion online, as well as making a living at it. By 2015, it had become common knowledge that you could make exorbitant amounts of money on YouTube by upping the ante more and more with content that was more dangerous and more exciting each time that you did it. Of course, car culture caught on to this, definitely including the JDM car culture. Even car magazines were moving to places like YouTube to be able to take advantage of the space and the viewership. YouTube was getting 2 to 3 times the viewership television was. Things were on a steady path until about 2020. All of a sudden, the pandemic happened. And out of nowhere, everything was shut down overnight. People were locked down in their homes. Businesses were closed. The economy was not looking good and everybody was stuck at home with nothing to do except watch Netflix and YouTube. After most people were done binge watching Tiger King, the automotive world braced itself for an epic slowdown that they did not see coming. But something strange happened. People got stimulus checks, and they began to spend them on car parts. With so many people out of work through 2020 and 2021, we saw a huge influx of creators popping up on YouTube, building cars their way, sharing their passion. Unfortunately, a lot of this was short-lived due to what the pandemic did. It created supply chain shortages in the new car market. Also, inflation began to take hold. Regular old cars just went up in price just because it was something that was available. And of course, enthusiasts know something as the JDM tax began to skyrocket unbelievably. Now, any JDM car from the 90s in decent condition is pulling a premium 1 week before race wars. Through 2021 and 22, we saw an extreme price hike on everything JDM. Toyota Supras now worth more than ever. RX-7s getting double or triple the price they were before. Even Honda Civics were pulling in a price that would boggle the mind from just 2 years ago. At this point, the JDM car space is dominated by those who can afford it. And it's unfortunate because these cars were once the hero to the guy on a budget. No longer can you build a car on an extreme shoestring budget without some sort of homeboy hookup or sweet honey hole somewhere you've got hidden away that nobody else knows about. The awareness of JDM parts has become so extreme that people are now raiding junkyards so that they can pull these parts, flip them, and repost them online because these parts are getting harder and harder to find. And people know that they're going to pull a premium price in a couple of years. So this brings us to the end of our story. And of course, we have to pass it off to you. What do you guys think? What's the future of JDM? What's the future of the import car scene? Are we really looking at living in a world where the Toyota Supra and Integra Type R are only owned by the elite, just for the Honda Civic to follow closely behind? The future's here and it's a crazy world. I never thought I would see this day this soon. I knew that one day Civics would be worth something, but I thought it'd be 2050 by the time I saw that. Let me know in the comments section below the things that I forgot and completely missed from the history of street racing and JDM car culture. I know I missed something, I'm sure. And what do you guys remember? What's your fondest memories? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you like this type of video, give me a thumbs up. I'll make more of them. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.